At my parents' dinner table, she held my hand, called me sweet, and said she was still keeping her options open. I let go of her hand, stood up and said, "We should go." As my parents watched her in shock, I took her home without saying a word. As she tried to explain herself at the door, I said, "You're free to explore now," and left. Hello everyone. Before we start the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Click like if you want to see more stories like this. Thank you. The dashboard clock read 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes ahead of schedule. I adjusted the bottle of Chardonnay on the passenger seat, my mom's favorite, and glanced at Chloe. She was scrolling through her phone. The blue light from her phone painted her face in sharp angles. A thumbnail flickered, showing a video of some comedian. "Are you ready?" I asked, my voice too loud in the quiet car. "Yeah, totally," she said without looking up. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just let me finish this." I watched her for a second. She'd been quiet and distracted all week. When I asked about it yesterday, she waved it off. "Just work stuff, Mark. You know how it is." I believed her. I always believed her. I spent the afternoon cleaning my apartment, imagining a version of tonight where after dessert I'd mention the idea of her moving in. I already had it all planned out. My apartment was bigger and closer to her work. Financially, it made sense. I had rehearsed the speech in the shower. It's the logical next step. "Okay, let's go," she finally said, tucking her phone into her purse with a sigh. She offered me a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The walk to the front door felt normal. My childhood home smelled the same as always. Lemon-scented polish, the aroma of slowly cooked roast, the soft, comforting scent of old books. My mom, Linda, wrapped me in a hug, then held Chloe at arm's length. "You look beautiful, dear. That color looks fantastic on you." "Thank you, Linda," Chloe said, turning on all her charm. She handed over the wine. "For you." My dad, Robert, came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. A firm handshake for me, a warm squeeze for Chloe. "The maestro is almost done. Have a seat, you two." We settled in the living room. The fine glasses were on display. Sinatra played softly from the old stereo. It was a scene from my dreams of a stable future. Chloe sat close to me on the couch, her leg pressed against mine. I felt my earlier anxiety subside. See, everything was fine. Dinner was my dad's famous pot roast. Carrots and potatoes cooked to perfection with a generous layer of butter. The conversation flowed easily, a smooth exchange. Dad asked about the new software implementation at my company. Mom asked Chloe about the big charity event she was helping to plan. "It's going to be incredible," Chloe said, gesturing with her hands. "We have a silent auction item that's a weekend ski trip to Aspen. I'm almost bidding on it myself." She laughed and my parents laughed with her. She was luminous, the center of gravity at the table. I just watched, content to orbit around her. Then my mom poured more wine and asked the question I'd been hoping for. "So you too," she began, her voice warm with curiosity. "We don't like to pry, but are there any big plans on the horizon? You seem so well suited." It was the opening. My heart leaped. I felt Chloe's hand find mine under the table. Her fingers were cold. I took it as a signal, a squeeze of solidarity. I opened my mouth to deliver my rehearsed, logical speech, but Chloe spoke first. She leaned slightly forward, her voice taking on a confidential, almost philosophical tone. "You know, Linda, that's a great question." She paused, looking from my mom to my dad and then to our joined hands on the tablecloth. She gave my hand a condescending pat. "Mark, he's the sweetest man I've ever met. Truly so kind, so stable," she said. Stable as if it were a benign medical condition. "He's like a cozy fireplace, perfect." I felt a coldness begin to trickle through my stomach. She continued, her gaze now drifting to the window, as if seeing a more exciting world out there. "But I'm at a point in my life where I need to be sure of everything. I'm young." "Well, kind of young." She let out a crystal-clear laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "I feel like I owe it to myself to keep exploring my options. You understand, don't you?" The world didn't crumble. It didn't go dark. It became hyper-focused, crystal clear in its cruelty. I saw the grain of paprika on the tablecloth near my plate. I saw the slow, horrified sinking of my mother's smile. I saw my father's fork stop midway to his mouth. I felt the weight of Chloe's hand on mine, a dead, heavy thing. Exploring my options. The words hung in the air, mixing with the aroma of roast and gravy. She had just told my parents, the two people who loved me most in this world, that their son was just a temporary placeholder. A cozy fireplace while she shopped for materials for a roaring, destructive bonfire. A deep silence swallowed the room. The only sound was the faint whisper of "Fly Me to the Moon," playing in the living room. I looked at her hands. Her thin, well-manicured fingers rested on my broader, working man's hands. Once a public display of affection, it was in that second the most violent act of disrespect I had ever witnessed. Calmly, without saying a word, I withdrew my hand from under hers. The sound of my chair legs scraping across the wooden floor was like a gunshot in the silence. I stood up. My movements seemed mechanical, precise. I looked at my parents. My mother's eyes were wide, glistening. My father's face was a mask of stone, his jaw clenched. "We should go," I said. My voice was monotone, strange even to me. It contained no anger, no tremor. It was a simple statement of fact. I walked around the table and pulled out Chloe's chair for her. She was staring at me, her confident expression finally crumbling into confusion. "Mark, what are you?" "We're leaving," I repeated, not looking at her. I looked at my father. He gave me a nod so small, almost imperceptible, an understanding, a transfer of dignity. I guided Chloe, now disturbed and silent, from her chair. I grabbed her purse from the sideboard. I didn't look at my mother. I couldn't. "Thank you for dinner," I said to the space between them. "It was excellent." And then I led the ghost of my relationship out of my parents' house, leaving the ruins of the future I had imagined cooling on the dining room table. The cold night air hit us like a slap. Chloe finally found her voice. "Mark, stop. What was that? You're being ridiculous." I didn't respond. I unlocked the car, got in the driver's seat, and started the engine. She stood outside for a moment before yanking the passenger door open and getting in. "Are you serious?" she demanded, her confusion quickly turning to anger. "You dragged me out of there over a little comment." I pulled out of the driveway. The streets in my parents' neighborhood were dark and quiet. "It wasn't a little comment, Chloe," I said, eyes fixed on the road. My voice was still in that monotone, terribly calm tone. "My God, you're so sensitive," she exploded, throwing up her hands. "I was just being honest with them. I was being sincere. Isn't that what you always say you want? Honesty?" "Honesty," I repeated. It wasn't a question, just a word being tested. Yes, I was telling them the truth. "I love you, Mark. You know I do. But love isn't always enough. There's a whole world out there. I have needs. I have curiosities. Is it a crime to want to be sure?" I signaled to turn. The click-clack of the turn signal was the loudest sound in the world. "So I'm an experiment," I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a conclusion. "No, don't put words in my mouth. You're my foundation." But even foundations are inspected, aren't they? To make sure they can handle what's being built on them. The metaphor was so absurdly selfish it almost broke through my numbness. Almost. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You humiliated me," I said, the words quiet in front of my parents. "You reduced 2 years of my life to a rehearsal for you. I didn't do that. You're overreacting. They adore me. They understood what I meant. You're choosing to hurt yourself because you're afraid of anything that isn't your perfect, planned little life." The floodgates opened. For 20 minutes she spun in circles. Her words were a whirlwind of justifications, self-pity, and veiled insults disguised as concern. "You're misinterpreting this. I just mean I need to grow as a person and you're so satisfied. It's not you, it's me. I want to experience more before settling down. Don't you see this is healthy? This is modern dating. You're so sweet, Mark. But sweetness can be passive." I drove. I didn't look at her. I didn't interrupt. I just absorbed the flow, letting each word wrap around me and solidify the ice in my chest. This is how she was. She had always been this way. I was just too comfortable with the fireplace to feel the draft. We arrived at her building. I parked in a visitor's spot and put the car in park. The engine idled. The silence returned, now heavier, saturated with her worn-out rhetoric. She looked at me, waiting for a response. A fight, tears, begging, something she could work with, twist, or dominate. I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out. I walked around the car and opened her door. One last automatic act of courtesy. She got out, studying my face. "Mark, talk to me, please." I looked at her, and then really looked at the girl I had imagined building a logical future with. I felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just a vast, empty clarity. She took a step toward me, reaching out to touch my arm. I took a deliberate step back, out of her reach. Her eyes widened. That was the first thing that really seemed to frighten her. My physical withdrawal, done with calm intention. I met her gaze. My voice was calm, definitive, and completely devoid of any emotion. "Now you're free to explore." I turned, walked back to my car, and closed the door. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing on the sidewalk, motionless, one hand still slightly extended. I didn't wait to see if she moved. I drove away, and with each block, the weight in the car diminished until there was just me, the road, and a silence that was no longer filled with her excuses, but with a deep and growing peace. The silence in my apartment was different now. Before, it was something passive, a space waiting to be filled with the sound of her key in the lock, her laughter, her critiques of my movie choices. Now it was active. It was mine. I didn't collapse. I didn't give up on things. I stood in the middle of the living room, the same room where I had imagined we'd be discussing floor plans, and I just breathed. The numbness was a cocoon. Within it, something very quiet and very decisive was weaving itself back together. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Mom." I answered. "Mark, honey, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom," I said, gently cutting her off. My voice sounded normal. Surprised me. "It's over." A pause from her, filled with a mother's silent anguish. What she said at my table. "I know," I said. "No, please. I just need to avoid talking about it right now." "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, we understand." I hung up. The next action felt instinctive, surgical. I opened my phone. I navigated to her contact. A photo of her laughing on the beach. A moment I now knew was just a scene in her ongoing exploration. I blocked her number. I opened Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, all my digital connections. Blocked, unfollowed. It took less than 3 minutes. I wasn't angry. I was decontaminating a space. On the first night, I slept like a rock. On the second, I woke up at 3 in the morning. The memory of her words at my parents' dinner table replayed in a cold, sharp loop. Not with pain, but with a sharp analytical clarity. Exploring my options. I saw my father's frozen fork, my mother's shattered smile. I let the humiliation wash over me, pass through me. I didn't fight it. I observed it like a scientist studying a toxic sample. And then, as the dawn light seeped through the blinds in gray tones, it was over. The sample was recorded. The feeling drained away. I didn't call in sick to work. I went, attended meetings, had lunch at my desk. The world kept spinning. My hands knew the keyboard. My logic could still unravel complex problems. That was a relief. The real work began after 5 p.m. I joined a gym, not the one I casually attended before, but a serious, no-frills place with heavy punching bags and free weight racks. I didn't know what I was doing. I hired a personal trainer for 3 sessions just to learn the form. The first time I lifted a weight in a deadlift, it felt impossible. My muscles screamed, my vision focused. I thought of her patting my hand. Sweet. Stable. I locked out the lift. The crash of the plates on the floor was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in years. I let my friends find out through a group message that Chloe and I had broken up. No drama, just different paths, I wrote. They offered to bring me drinks so I could vent. I declined. Soon, I promised. Instead, I called James, an old college friend who had moved to the city last year. We talked over burgers and beer. We didn't talk about her. We talked about the terrible startup he worked for, the absurdity of modern marketing, and the new season of that sci-fi show we both loved. It was easy. It was uncomplicated. It was friendship without obligation. I enrolled in an online certification course for a new programming framework. It was something I'd been putting off for a year, claiming to be too busy. Now my evenings had new meaning: architecture, gym, studying, cooking. I learned to make pan-seared salmon with crispy skin. I perfected a creamy garlic sauce. I ate dinner at my kitchen island, listening to history podcasts. The meal was perfect because I had prepared it for myself. The weeks turned into months. The season changed. The sharp coldness of betrayal softened into a simple, unpleasant fact of my past. Like a scar you forget you have. I thought of her less and less. When I did think of her, it was without heat. She was a person who had made a choice. I was a person who had accepted it. The first whisper of karma came on a rainy Tuesday. I was meeting James for coffee and he was late, scrolling through his phone when he arrived. "Sorry," he said, sliding into the booth. "Got sucked into the drama vortex." I raised an eyebrow, taking a sip of my black coffee. "Mutual acquaintances," he said, choosing his words carefully. He knew I had blocked the entire constellation of her life. "Apparently Chloe's new situation is intense." I said nothing. I asked nothing. My silence was an open door. He could choose to walk through it or not. He sighed. "A guy named Jason. Some entrepreneur selling like imported flashlight batteries or something on the internet. Drives a Maserati at least. Super flashy guy." I waited. "Seems like he's her option." She was exploring. James continued, watching me. From what I hear, it's a roller coaster. One week they're in Las Vegas. The next, she's crying at brunch because he doesn't like labels. Her friends are exhausted. I felt a distant, slight ripple. It wasn't schadenfreude. It was a more specific recognition. The unstable, showy bonfire she had traded her cozy fireplace for was, predictably, burning everything around it. It was the logical outcome of her search for something other than sweet. Finally, he said, "That's." James laughed. He looked out the window at the rain streaking the glass. She wanted excitement. Looks like she found it. James shook his head, a slow smile spreading. "You're different, man." "Am I?" "Yeah." The old Mark would have worried. Would have asked 5 more questions just to make sure she was okay. The old Mark was right. That man died politely at the dinner table months ago. "I'm not responsible for her choices," I said. And it was the simplest, truest thing I'd said in a long time. I changed the subject to James's job search. The ripple dissipated. The lake was calm. The seasons changed again. A year passed. The certification was on my LinkedIn profile. My salary had increased. My body had changed. Not to that of a bodybuilder, but to something firmer, more capable. The silence in my apartment was now companionship, not emptiness. Karma didn't arrive with a bang. It seeped through the cracks, reported not by her, but by the tenuous residual echoes of our once shared world. I saw Mia, her best friend, at a supermarket. I turned my cart down the cereal aisle to avoid her, but she had seen me. There was a tight, tired look around her eyes. She gave me a small, somewhat awkward wave. I returned the wave, a neutral acknowledgement, and moved on. A month later, James reported that Mia and Chloe had had an ugly fight and weren't speaking. The reason was Jason. Social media glimpses seen through the reluctant windows of friends who hadn't purged told a silent story. The fancy dinners and club photos ceased. The posts became sporadic and then erratic. A quote about betrayal, a blurry photo of a wine glass at home, then nothing for weeks. The final report came from the most reliable source. Public data, cold and concrete. One evening, bored while waiting for code to compile, I did something I had never allowed myself to do before. I searched for Jason's company. It was easy to find, a flashy website full of stock images and words like disruptive and synergy. A few more clicks beyond the facade, accessing state business records. His LLC had been dissolved 6 months earlier for failure to pay fees. A comment on a local business forum dated last week. Scammer accepted orders, never delivered. Avoid. So the bonfire consumed its own fuel and began to fail. It was neither satisfying nor sad. It was as neutral a fact as the weather. The option was explored. It proved unsuitable. The first direct contact was a text message. An unsaved number on my phone, but whose area code I recognized. It arrived on a Sunday morning. I was reading with the warm sun on my back. Unknown number, Mark, it's Chloe. I know I probably shouldn't be texting you. I think I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk? The word hovered on my screen. I felt nothing. No racing heartbeat. No tightness in my chest. It was just pixels. I saw the ellipsis appear, then disappear. She was waiting. I put the phone face down on the table. I finished my chapter. I made another cup of coffee. I watched a bird build a nest in the tree outside my window. The phone vibrated again. 2 hours later. Unknown number, please. I picked up the phone. I didn't delete the messages. I opened the contact and created a new entry. I named it Do Not Answer. I saved the number. Then I blocked it. The action felt hygienic. I wasn't ignoring her out of pain. I was filtering a distraction the way I would filter spam from my inbox. Her mistake was now her problem. My peace was mine to protect. The two were no longer connected. The exploration had ended and I was no longer in unknown territory. I was my own sovereign nation with closed borders. The voicemail came a week later. I was reviewing plans for a deck I was planning to build on my small patio. A tangible project for my tangible life. My phone lit up with the Do Not Answer identifier. I let it go to voicemail, finished measuring my joists, and then listened to it on speakerphone while I cleaned my tools. Her voice was thin, watery, devoid of the confidence it used to have on stage. Mark, it's me. I know you probably hate me. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I was scared, I was stupid and young, and I said the most horrible thing to the best person I've ever known. You were my home. I didn't know what I had until I burned it down. Please, can you call me back? I'm so lost. I heard a muffled sob, then the click. I saved the voicemail, not as a precious memory, but as a reference point, A reminder of the abrupt change in tone, from the arrogance of my rejection at my parents' table to that basic need. It was useful data. I filed it away and moved on. The friend intervention came next. Mia's name appeared on my screen. I almost let it ring, but curiosity, cold and clinical, won out. "Mark," she began, her voice strained with false, bright sympathy. "Hi, how are you?" "I'm fine, Mia. What can I do for you?" I kept my tone polite, impersonal like a bank teller. Pause. She wasn't used to my framework. "Well, I'm calling about Chloe. I assume you know she's really not doing well, Mark? Like really bad. That guy Jason was a nightmare. He took money from her, lied about everything. It was all a facade. She's completely devastated. I know it didn't work out." I made another pause. My lack of empathy was disrupting her script. "Right. Well, she's suffering. She's alone. Her friends, many of us, are tired of all this mess. You know, she needs someone stable." I waited. "Look, Mia, I know what she did was horrible. At that dinner. My God, but would it cost you too much to show a little compassion? Just talk to her? You were together for 2 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I leaned back in my chair looking at the city lights. "Mia, my compassion ran out a long time ago. I'm not responsible for the consequences of her choices. She's free to explore. Remember, freedom includes facing the consequences of exploration." "That's cold, Mark." "It's factual." I even corrected my voice tone. "Is there anything else?" She hung up. The messages started that night. They pulsed through the silence of my apartment. Small distress signals from a ship. I was no longer on board. No response. "Why won't you answer me?" I said I was sorry. No response. "You were never this cruel. You've changed." No response. "Is this your revenge? Just ignoring me while I'm falling apart?" I didn't block the new number. The messages were like weather reports from a hurricane that had already passed me by. I read them with distant interest. The subtext was clear. Her pain was now my moral failing. The ending was on a Thursday night. I was chopping vegetables, a knife moving in a steady rhythm against the cutting board when my building's buzzer rang. I ignored it. It rang again, long and insistently. Then a third time in a frantic staccato. A sigh escaped me, not from irritation but from a small inconvenience. I wiped my hands, went to the intercom and pressed the button without speaking. "Mark, it's me. I know you're there. Please, I need to see you." Her voice was hoarse, trembling through the cheap speaker. I said nothing. I released the button. The buzzer rang again, a long, desperate sound. I knew my neighbors would complain. The path of least resistance to my peace was a brief, firm interaction. I let her in. I didn't open my apartment door fully. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a barrier. She looked diminished. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes puffy. The vibrant, determined energy had vanished, replaced by a nervous need. "You don't answer my calls," she said, her voice accusatory. "No," I agreed. "What? How can you just cut me out? After everything?" She took a step forward. I didn't step back, but my posture didn't yield an inch. She stopped. "You asked for your freedom," I stated. "You have it." I gestured vaguely between us. "It's not my problem." "It's not your problem?" A hysterical laugh escaped her. "I'm suffering, Mark. The man I left you for was a con artist. He's gone. My friends are gone. I have nothing." I remained silent, letting her words hang in the hallway. "Don't you see?" she pleaded, tears starting to well up. "It was all a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake. You were right. You were always right. Stability is good. Sweetness is good. I was an idiot. I want to come home." The word home hit me like a thud. It meant my apartment, my life, the stability she had publicly rejected. It wasn't an apology. It was a requisition order. "This isn't your home," I said. My voice low and definitive. Her face contorted, then hardened. The tears dried up, replaced by a flash of the old, frustrated sense of entitlement. Raw need got her nowhere, so she changed tactics. "You were never this cold." "What's your problem?" she shot back, raising her voice. "Did I hurt you that badly? Is that it? Are you just an empty, bitter shell now?" I said I was sorry. "What more do you want from me?" There it was. The true colors. The anger that became clear when her manipulation failed. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted it didn't work out for her. She wanted me to offer her absolution and shelter. And my refusal was a personal offense. I looked at her, this angry, uncontrolled stranger in my hallway. I felt a deep, silent certainty. "I don't want anything from you, Chloe," I said in a completely neutral tone. "Nothing." The simplicity of it deflated her. The anger dissipated, leaving her looking small and confused. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. "Goodbye," I said, not as a wish but as a description. I closed the door. I heard a muffled sob. Then the sound of her footsteps moving away down the hallway. I returned to the kitchen, picked up my knife and finished chopping the onion. The tears in my eyes were from the vegetable, nothing more. On Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through the high glass canopy of the busy downtown farmers market. The air smelled of fresh bread, roasted coffee, and ripe strawberries. I held a wicker basket in one hand and Sarah's hand in the other. Sarah was a landscape architect I had met through a work project. She had a calm, centered energy and a smile that felt like a genuine discovery, not a performance. We'd been dating for 4 months. It was easy. It was peaceful. It was mutual. We were debating the merits of heirloom tomatoes versus perfectly round ones when I felt a familiar, intense gaze, a tingling sensation that made me look up. Chloe was about 10 feet away near a flower stand. She held a single overpriced latte. She looked put together but in a tense way, like a sheet pulled too tight. Her eyes were fixed on me, then shifted to Sarah, and then to our intertwined hands. A complex mixture of calculation, loss, and envy passed across her face before she suppressed it. Sarah, noticing my shift, followed my gaze. "A friend of yours?" she asked, her voice soft. "Someone I used to know," I said, gently squeezing her hand. "It's okay." But Chloe was already crossing the space between us. She ignored Sarah completely, her eyes a fixed laser on me with desperate determination. "Mark." "Hi, Chloe." I nodded. An awkward pause. The market spun around us. Laughter, bargaining, a child squealing. Can we please grab a coffee? Talk like friends?" The words tumbled out, rehearsed and fragile. Sarah politely studied a honey display, giving us an appearance of privacy without actually moving away. Her presence was a silent anchor. "No," I said. The word wasn't harsh. It was simply definitive, like stating the sky is blue. Her composure broke. "What? Why are you doing this?" I said I was sorry. "I've already apologized. I miss you. I miss us." I took a deep breath, the scent of earth and basil filling my lungs. I looked at her. I really looked and felt nothing but a faint, distant pity for the ghost she was chasing. "Chloe, no," I said, my voice calm and clear. "This is Sarah." I gestured slightly to my side. Sarah offered a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, a protective reflex. "We're in the middle of our day." Chloe's eyes finally turned to Sarah, really seeing her for the first time. The natural confidence, the absence of neediness, the way she positioned herself at my side without leaning on me. A new wave of desperation hit her. I miss you," she repeated. The phrase now sounded empty, a script without an audience. I looked at her, and in that look, in that moment, I reached the definitive, absolute form of moving on. I spoke the pure, naked truth, not to hurt her, but because it was the only thing I had left in me related to her. "I don't think about you," I said. It wasn't arrogance or provocation. It was a report from inside my life. "I wish you all the best, Chloe. Really. But please don't contact me again." I turned my body slightly, a physical punctuation to the sentence. I looked at Sarah and my entire posture changed, softened. "Honey," I said, my voice warming for the first time in the conversation. "The bakery stand with the sourdough bread is this way. I think we're getting close." Sarah's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Lead the way." We turned. We walked. We blended back into the flow of the market, into the sunlight and the smell of bread. I didn't look back. I felt her gaze on my back for a few more seconds, a phantom wait, and then it disappeared, dissolving into the noise and life of the perfect morning. There was no victory in it, no lingering sting. There was just the warm, solid reality of Sarah's hand in mine, the list in my basket, and the deep, peaceful understanding that the past was at last and completely just that, a closed chapter in a book I no longer read. I was free and had been for a very, very long time. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. What did you think of this story? Share your opinion in the comments.